members of the Senate, of the House of Representatives. Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
When they must prepare to defend not their homes alone, but the tenets of faith and humanity.
After World War I, the German Empire was blamed and forced to sign the Treaty of Versailles. It led them to a much more severe depression. A man named Adolf Hitler came to power and took advantage of the people's resentment and took total control of the government. After taking back some old German territory, Hitler made an alliance with Joseph Stalin, the leader of the USSR, to conquer Poland. However, Poland had a special compact with Britain and France, which triggered a big war in Europe. On December 7th, 1941, Imperial Japan, or also known as the Japanese Empire, who is in alliance with Hitler's Axis faction, made a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor in Honolulu, Hawaii, which was part of America. And America's response demanded to avenge their citizens and military members that died on the day of the attack. Thus, the world was now at war, and hence the name World War II. To start off the source of the Second World War, after Germany was forced to sign the Treaty of Versailles, they were limited to what they could have for defense and what they can produce, which led them to their Great Depression. On August 19, 1933, Adolf Hitler was elected as Chancellor of Germany. Before he came into power, the President of Germany, Paul von Hindenburg, appointed Adolf Hitler to be the Chancellor because his advisors believed that they could control Hitler, until Hindenburg's death on August 2, 1934. With him dead, Hitler combined the two roles of Chancellor and President and became the famous and well-known Führer, which translates to leader or guide. But how he got his nickname was not as you think. Hitler gave himself the nickname when he founded the Nazi Party, also known as the National Socialist Workers' Party, the NSDAP, on February 19, 1920. But later renamed just as German Workers' Party, DAP. The ideals of the party was that it was against any capitalist themes. When the 1930s arrived, it shifted to anti-Semitic and anti-Marxist themes. From that day, he invented the party and declared that the Führerprinzip, translated to the leader principle, was the supreme law of the party, which meant that the party was going to be governed by the dictatorship, or in a nutshell, his version of Mussolini's fascism, but wasn't enforced until early July 1921. Now, with Hitler's origin of coming to power out of the way, let's take a look at what his intentions were. He wanted to recreate the German Reich, which Reich translates to empire. Create a belief system that only one supreme race can stop racial struggles and against inferior. Expand German territory and reunite the old German lands. Finally, conquest for world domination. As a few years passed, he was able to reclaim some old German territory. Was in the process of creating a master race, but was still setting his long-term goal of conquering all of Europe. He was able to take back Austria and Czechoslovakia, and his next victim wasn't going to be so easy because it had a special compact with Britain and France, so he had to call in some help. He dialed Mussolini and Stalin for military aid, but had to make a special deal with Joseph Stalin. Hitler offered to give him a small part of Poland after they were done with the invasion. Stalin agreed to the deal and made a non-aggression compact, which gave them the ability to not declare war on each other for a long period of time. On September 1st, 1939, Poland was being raided from the west and east, which later resulted in victory for Germany and Russia. From the invasion triggered the call to arms defense of Britain and France because Poland signed their compact to avenge them when they needed it. Thus, the war in the European theater. After Russia broke up with Germany because they began to distrust each other right after the invasion of Poland, Hitler planned to conquer the rest of Europe, and Russia was next on his hit list. As a few months went by, the Nazis reclaimed the rest of Poland and half of Russia. It wasn't looking good for Stalin until September 30th, 1941. The Battle of Moscow was at his front doorstep. He came prepared to defend Moscow at all costs. But what later came to his surprise, he discovered that the Nazis froze to death. It has been known that any country that tried to face Russia during the winter season could never handle the harsh Russian winter. Stalin saw this as an opportunity, as the USSR has been saved by nature, started to have high demand for military production, lines to kick the Nazis out of Russia, and to kill the heart of the Reich. Well, let's take a step back to one of Hitler's most prized victims, Britain and France. After Hitler conquered Poland with the USSR, he made a special warplane called Blitzkrieg, or in France's case, Manstein, which is also known as Yellow Case. After launching his attack on June 25, 1941, France surrendered by the command of the French government because they were being overrun and outdone by German troops. Next up was the Battle of Britain, mostly focused on aerial combat. Hitler had a special fleet of planes called the Luftwaffe, and they started bombing and storming London. Thanks to Air Chief Marshal Sir Hugh Dowding, the Luftwaffe went from unpredictable to predictable. Sir Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill, who had a huge amount of negative reviews and perspectives of Adolf Hitler, was making Hitler's military flee in terror on October 31st, 1940. Right after that, the Battle of Moscow happened, and Order 227, Stalin's order called No Step Back, meant no surrender and no turning back to his military. Speaking of Joseph Stalin, he wasn't only fighting Hitler, but also a man named Emperor Hirohito. Hirohito was the leader of the Japanese Empire, also known as his Imperial Empire. Japan in 1905 took some Russian territory in the southern Salankan Islands and the Kuril Islands. In 1920, the Bolsheviks, or Vladimir Lenin's rebel coup that sparked the USSR, took the northern Salankan. However, the Japanese were able to capture the rest of Salankan. Until August 9, 1945 came along for the Soviet Union. It was said to be the last war of World War II. With the aid of Mongolia, both of them were able to push and kick the Japanese out of old Russian territory on September 2nd, 1945. But Russia was not the first victim of Japan's blacklist. Imperial Japan first fought Asian continents, and then a country that Hitler and everyone in the East calls the Giant, to not attack, but Hirohito approved of his commander's Emerald Asako Yamamoto's plan to attack it. He believed that a surprise bombing would weaken its fleet. December 7th, 1941, a Japanese air raid was established and headed towards Honolulu, Hawaii, at a naval base named Pearl Harbor. From that day, the Japanese squadron took out many U.S. ships along with non-active military personnel and civilians. The United States of America made it clear that they wanted to remain out of any wars, especially in the First World War. The casualties from the attack were 350 vessels sunk or damaged, 300 U.S. aircraft destroyed, and 2,403 men plus 68 civilians. As much as Franklin D. Roosevelt heard his Congress say that they shouldn't attack back, he was in massive disbelief of what he was hearing. As a direct order from the president in avenging the fallen men and innocent, he demanded his order to declare a war on the Japanese Empire. Then the Battle of Midway was launched from to June 7th, 1942, and it was mainly focused on a naval and aerial combat, but the entire war in Pacific theater was called the Pacific War. While America was handling the Japs in the Pacific, they also accepted Britain's invitation to help them out with the Germans. On June 6, 1944, Canadian, British, and American soldiers were sent to fight on the beach of Normandy to push and destroy Nazi bunkers and to have some land superiority to liberate France. On August 25, 1944, Free France, also known as France Libre, also helped the Allies reclaim Paris from the Germans, and on the following night, they successfully freed France. While the rest of the Allies were busy with the western front lines of Germany, the Russians were able to beat them to Berlin on the eastern front. From April 20th to May 2nd, 1945, the Battle of Berlin was where they would find the heart of the Rebels.
Keep them away from the flag bearer!
You can make it, my friend. You always survive. The honor should be yours. As long as you live, the heart of this army can never be broken.
Things will change, my friend. As heroes, we will return to Russia's embrace.
As the European theater ended with Adolf Hitler committing suicide on April 30th, 1945, knowing that the USSR was coming for him, and Benito Mussolini was shot and hanged by his very own people by April 28th, 1945, a day before Hitler killed himself. To take a step back for a moment, let me drop some facts about El Duce himself. El Duce, translated from Italian, the leader, Benito Mussolini was the inventor of fascism. In his story, it was short and poor. Mussolini wanted to create a new Roman Empire, and one of the following of his steps, he wanted to reclaim Ethiopia because it was once a part of Italy. Out of his impatience, his generals informed him that the Italian military wasn't ready for war yet because they were trying to recover from the World Depression. But he forced an order to go fight a war in Ethiopia, which later became a disaster failure and would later become a little kid to Hitler to rely on supplies and soldiers to help him conquer Greece. In return, Mussolini gave Hitler support until Hitler was on the brink of losing, which he later switched sides. Now back on track. As the Pacific War was still going on, America's famous nuclear scientist, J. Robert Oppenheimer, the founder of the Manhattan Project and inventor of the nuclear bomb, as soon as it was a success, an order of President Truman demanded that the bomb to be dropped on Hiroshima. On August 6, 1945, the first nuclear bomb, also known as Little Boy, destroyed the city of Hiroshima. Then August 9th, a bigger bomb named Fat Man destroyed Nagasaki. Thus, the Pacific War was over. The last war for World War II was when the Japanese took some Russian territory, which at the end resulted in victory for the Russians. As the Second World War ended, Germany was split into 4 sides, but had 2 ideologies on each side. The West was democratic, while the East was controlled by the communism. And the Cold War brewed with the United States and Russia. Italy was shifting from monarchy ideologies to republican ideologies. Japan was forced to be crippled, and General Douglas A. MacArthur was sent to interrogate with the Emperor of Japan. Hirohito's military and himself were getting massive negative outcries of dishonors from his own people, but yet still resulted in mixed perspectives about him and the soldiers that fought. At the end, the Allies helped rebuild the lands that were destroyed by the war and helped the civilians along, making sure the Fascist 3 don't become a threat in the near future. The end.